This is TWiT.
So we have Facebook's, and we have a count. 533,313,128 user Whoopsie. We talked a lot about this Facebook breach back when it happened. It was 2 years ago in 2019. And now the data that was taken during that intrusion has all just been released onto the dark web for free. You don't have to pay anything. This includes the full username, the full names, Facebook, real world names, Facebook IDs, mobile phone numbers, physical locations, email addresses, genders, occupations, city, country, marital status, account creation date, and other profile details which in this massive database are broken down by country, with over at least 32 million records belonging to users in the U.S. alone, 11 million in the U.K., 6 million users in India, and so forth. So when I saw this, I thought, you got to love it that Facebook has a position there titled Director of Strategic Response Communications. And you can imagine the conversation. Hi, what do you do? Well, my name is Liz Bourgeois. It actually is. And I'm the Director of Strategic Response Communications for Facebook. And the person says, wow. So when the you-know-what hits the fan, you're the person who gets quoted in the media while managing to never say anything meaningful. And Liz responds, yes, that's a perfect job description. So in this case, Liz said, quote, this is old data that was previously reported on in 2019. We found and fixed this issue in August of 2019. Oh, okay. Well, so the data is old. Then what? That creaky old data must no longer apply, right? People have all changed their names and phone numbers and Facebook IDs. They've all moved and changed their genders and so forth. So we really don't need to worry that the data of 533,313,128 Facebook users from only 2 years ago, not so old really, is now being offered for free in bulk on the dark web. Thanks, Liz. Whew. For a while there, this seemed like it might be a big deal. And that was, by the way, a beautifully executed strategic response. Very strategic.
That's why she is the Director of Strategic Response Communications.
Yes, you want.
Put that at the top of your resume for your next position of that same title.
Someone named Liz Bourgeois to be in charge of your strategic response. Okay, so just to remind our listeners, the data is known to have been obtained, we talked about this 2 years ago, apparently in August, by exploiting a vulnerability in Facebook's Add Friend feature, which enabled automated scripts to scrape with abandon Facebook users' public profiles and associated private phone numbers in bulk. It's true that the leak was fixed. And at the time, I remember being somewhat sympathetic to the complexity of doing what Facebook was doing. We got into the deep details of the API, and it was like, oh, okay, this, you could kind of understand how this happened, but at the same time, I remember expressing our worry that Facebook's controls allowed it to happen in the first place. We need them to do better. We need better from them. And I suspect that, for Liz, well, she's likely a lost cause. If you're wondering whether you might be affected by this massive Facebook data dump, Troy Huntz Have I Been Pwned site has your answer. And it just got upgraded since I wrote this last evening. So, and I have the update. Troy Hunt, and thanks to Simon Zarafa, whose tweet I saw just before the podcast. Troy Hunt has a long tweet thread on Twitter about his recent addition of the leaked Facebook data appearing on the web. I've got a link to the tweet if you're curious, and it's on the screen. Thank you, Jason, or producer, whoever's doing this. The upshot is that the data appears to be not only incomplete, but sparse when it comes to Facebook user email addresses, which is what Troy's Have I Been Pwned site is currently set up to cross-reference. Of the 533 plus million Facebook member records, only 2.5 million include an email address. What we really want in this case is a phone number, which is far more highly represented in the data. Troy yesterday indicated that he's exploring the possibility of allowing users to search on their phone numbers. Okay, since then, it happened. He says in his most recent posting over on TroyHunt.com, he said the Facebook phone numbers are now searchable in Have I Been Pwned. He said the headline is pretty self-explanatory, so in the interest of time, let me just jump directly into the details of how all this works. There's been huge, he has in italics, interest in this incident. And he said, I've seen near unprecedented traffic to Have I Been Pwned over the last couple of days. Let me do my best to explain how I've approached the phone number search feature, or if you're impatient, and then he has a link. He says, what's changed? And I'll just share the top of this. He said, I'd never planned to make phone numbers searchable, and indeed, this user voice idea sat there for over 5.5 years without action. My position on this was that it didn't make much sense for a bunch of reasons. First, phone numbers appear far less frequently than email addresses. Second, they're much harder to parse out of most data sets. He says, i.e., I can't just regex them out regex them out like email addresses can be. And three, they very often don't adhere to a consistent format across breaches and countries of origin. Right. It's, famously hard to even use a foreign phone number because how many digits? How's it grouped? Blah, blah, blah. So he says, plus, when the whole modus operandi of Have I Been Pwned is to literally answer the question, have I been pwned? So long as there are email addresses that can be searched, phone numbers don't add a whole lot of additional value. And then, I'll conclude with this, he said, the Facebook data changed all that. There's over 500 million phone numbers, but only a few million email addresses. So greater than 99% of people were getting a miss when they should have gotten a hit. The phone numbers were easy to parse out from mostly well-formatted files. They were also all normalized into a nice, consistent format with a country code. In short, this data set, it was pre-processed by Facebook, after all cleaned up and made searchable. This data set completely turned, he said, all of my reasons for not doing this on their head. So anyway, Have I Been Pwned.com. You can now put your phone number, what you had then, what you have now, various phone numbers, and see if you get any hits on that data. So once again, thanks to Troy for this.